Macho John Ned and Nakamal, I want to do a little talk about listening to experts versus listening to your own inner guidance. Your human wisdom, your common sense, your connection with spirit, especially doctors. I did a video the other day about the time that our baby had an asthma attack, which never had happened before and never happened after. But we took him to the hospital, and they put him in an oxygen tent and would not allow us to touch him. And he just went berserk. He just went berserk. Why aren't you touching me? And we put our heads together and said, we're taking him home. The doctor said, I'm not responsible for what terrible things that happened. We said, well, go fuck yourself. Basically, we did. And he was fine. We were right. The parents were right. I'm not one who says never trust doctors. I'm not a crazy Robert F. Kennedy who says don't vaccinate your kids. I was there. I'm old enough to remember the polio. Yeah, it's real. Polio is real. And the reality I lived with when I was a little kid, when you couldn't go to the amusement park because kids got polio there, that doesn't exist anymore. So some things you trust the doctors. But here's an example where I was right to not. When I passed a certain age, I'm 78 now, my primary doc, who was a really good doctor, recommended prostate cancer screening every 6 months or a year. And I got that, and my something levels were up. And they did x-rays and found a little cancer. It was 1% of my prostate had cancer. And the Gleason grading, where they measured how abnormal were the cancer cells, which was a predictor of how aggressive they would be, was a 6, which sounded high on a 10-point scale, but the urologist said, no, that's medium. No, you don't need to do anything. But I would recommend you get second opinions. That's my opinion. I did a big research study on watchful waiting, what they used to call it. Then they changed it to active surveillance, which is a better term. But he said, I would suggest watchful waiting, but get second opinions. Talk to a surgeon and talk to a oncologist that does chemo. And the surgeon gave me a balanced picture and said, here's what we do. You have to figure out, decide for yourself. The oncologist, I had to travel to a big university teaching hospital in North Carolina, said, no, do it now. Do it now. It's absolutely will get worse eventually, and you'll have less of a fighting chance. Do it now. Do surgery or radiation now. And he especially talked about radiation. I went back to my urologist. That scared me. That was the first time in the whole process I was scared. I went back to my urologist, and he said, you know, Dr. So-and-so is a very fine doctor, but he's an oncologist. He deals with advanced cases. We urologists see the early cases, and I did a big research paper. I studied all the literature and made a major presentation about why watchful waiting at your levels is the right thing to do. So I relaxed again. Couple years later, my Gleason grading score went up to a 7. And my very sharp urologist said, time to act. You have to. You really have to. Go talk to a surgeon and an oncologist again. You need to do something now. And I was shocked and scared and pondered and made an appointment with my dear friend David Mao, who is a retired physician, and said, I know you're not a urologist and you're not a specialist in this area. Would you be willing to review the literature and then we'll sit and have a beer and talk about it? He said, sure. And when I got to him, I said, Dave, I'm not scared. I'm not in denial. The psychologist doesn't mean I know myself, but I know myself pretty good, and I'm not in denial. I'm just not scared. And he says, I think you're right. My review of the literature says you don't have to act yet. There's too many ways. They act too fast, too often, do unnecessary surgery. I'd hold off. So I held off, and I felt completely relaxed. I had no worries about it. And 6 months later, when I went for a checkup, the Gleason grading had come down, back to 6. And my urologist said, oh, okay, well, I can support you in going back to watchful waiting. He didn't say, sorry, geez, I'm glad you didn't trust me. No, he just said, go back down. And a year later, they couldn't find any cancer at all. Nothing. Gone. So if I had trusted the docs, no, that would have been a very bad outcome. And it was it's like 15 years ago, 12, 15 years ago. I had completely forgotten it. I don't even remember what reminded me about it. But somebody, I guess, had prostate cancer. I said, oh, I used to have prostate. I didn't even, he recommended that I do annual follow-ups, and I just stopped because I no longer was worried about it. And I'm not. It's not coming back. And I don't even, it's not even a part of my consciousness. I had to be reminded that I actually had prostate cancer because it's like nothing to me anymore. So there are times, get advice and counsel and be thoughtful about it. But sometimes trust your gut. Yeah. Sometimes it's the thing to do. And it was for me.